The topic of the week is a pretty tricky one, Vince. Uh, um, are Games Workshop's prices too high? Um, it's an expensive hobby. I don't, you know, there's no way around that. For me, uh, the prices aren't really much of a consideration. Um, and that might be kind of strange for some people. But let me kind of argue it out, and it's complicated. Try to kind of stay on topic and not kind of ramble off. But a few other people like Vince and Victor have come up with strategies on production cost and comparisons in the market and things like that, and those are great. And but for me, um, they don't really apply to me. Like that's not something that I really ever consider or worry about. I'm strictly speaking kind of a Warhammer fan. Um, it's really the only thing that really interests me. Uh, I could do a video on that to an extent as it is. It's mostly just because I need to have everything. I'm extremely oriented towards ownership of, of everything that's kind of possible. So it's ridiculous enough with Games Workshop without going into other companies. But let me just try to stay on topic. And human evaluation, when we evaluate something, how we place value on things, is very personal. It's not something that is universal. Right, so like I have different tastes in music than you do, and it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to convince you that rap music is awesome or is horrible or whatnot. It doesn't really work that way. So if you think the models are too expensive, that's fine. Again, I'm not going to argue and convince you that the models are actually quite reasonable and you should be buying them. That doesn't really work that way. Likewise, you're not going to convince me that they're too expensive. The way it works is I personally value the models in some sense, and in terms of how they impact my life in a way that is a little bit higher than you, essentially. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I would say that when it comes to my discretionary spending, few things are higher on my list of priorities than Warhammer. And there's no really objective truth of whether or not this is a true problem or not. Everyone needs to come to their own answer to whether or not the prices are too high. So I asked my wife about it, and she says that the that the prices were a little outrageous. And I thought that was kind of amusing. I think she didn't want to I don't know, make me feel bad or something, but she said we still pay them, and she still purchased models for me for birthdays and Christmas and stuff like that. So we still buy the models. So that's not really in some ways a problem for us. But everyone spends their money in some capacity, and most what people usually spend it on, that I know of, and between people I'm friends with or family, a lot of what they spend their money on just doesn't interest me. And to me, I think that they're overspending or being ridiculous with how they're using their money. I would say I'm fairly intellectually drawn to the hobby, and for that reason, it goes beyond some sort of practical use of the models. To me, as they almost are like an art form, and in that sense, there is no value. I mean, if they quadrupled in price or something, I'd be more concerned. But to me, like a really expensive model like the Scar brand just means I have to maybe wait a month or two to buy it. But And usually I don't because I'm too impatient, but it's just kind of how it is. So spending habits are not really rational. People buy all sorts of things, and you know, you can even look at the things that might be considered practical, like they're not really connected to like what the immediate needs of life. Everyone spends their money, no matter, you know, how rich or poor you are. Like I wouldn't say I'm, you know, enormously wealthy or anything like that, but I still, you know, spend my money on the models. But you could kind of make, you know, I look at, you know, people, if someone bought like a really nice car or something, I'd be like, that's like $30,000 more than I'd be willing to spend. And that's, you know, if I were to spend that on the hobby, that's a huge amount of money. And the same goes for even for something like food. I mean, you know, I'm not eating out of the can. I choose to buy nice juicy steaks and relatively expensive food because I can. But I mean, I'm not putting all my resources towards Games Workshop, clearly. And if my, you know, if we were homeless or something, I'm not going to be buying models or charging up models. But how we choose to evaluate things are really complicated. So there's a French philosopher named Georges Bataille, which I've read a few of his books in school, and I think he's really interesting. He raises kind of the point that, you know, for engagements and stuff like that, it's customary to give the woman a ring, and you know, you could choose to buy a beautiful ring that looks really beautiful and stunning, and to the average person, they wouldn't recognize that, you know, the actual rock is fake. But most of us choose just to go out and buy like you know, it means something when I spend $3,000 or $4,000 on a crazy diamond ring. And to me, the whole hobby is a luxury item. You don't need to buy any of it. And if you're looking at the practical considerations of, well, what do I need to play the game? There are box sets, the starter box sets that are for both 40K and Age of Sigmar that are dirt cheap. And you can buy all the models you want on eBay for dirt cheap. You know, $100 of like the contents of, you know, one army in the box set, and you're set. You know, maybe you spend another $100 and you get the same box set again, and you have two armies. They're twice as large. Again, that's a small investment. To me, like, if you're not willing to make that, this hobby just isn't for you. So, like, if I were to look at my purchases of models in a practical sense, it'd be a really horrible investment. You know, based upon how much I spend versus how many games I play. That's not a method that would be a good way to judge the value for me, because it would be like $50 or $60 a game, and that's just like, you know, I like the game, but I wouldn't say it's worth that much. So I'm kind of like that gamer that GW markets to. I'm really more of an inspirational gamer that would, you know, or not inspirational. Someone that wants to play more. So someone that really aspires to play more. And I used to play a lot, and I always think, you know, I'm gonna get back to that point. I'm gonna play more games, and if it happens, awesome. But if it doesn't, in some ways, it doesn't really mean much to me. Like, if I like really expensive things, and it's a good hobby for me. And if it's something I like, I'll put money aside and save up. You know, most of my money goes to Games Workshop, and again, it's not a very rational kind of appeal. You know, I have other interests other than you know, Warhammer, but it's hard for me to kind of put the money towards those. Like, I look at, like, I have all sorts of really nice books and things like that I would love to buy, and I'm like, yeah, that's like $50. I don't know if I want to do that. But, you know, the Age of Sigmar books come out and they're like $80, and I hop right on and order those ones up, lickety split. So it, you know, it's a funny kind of system that I think a lot of people have with the game. And I don't know, you know, the game is far beyond the models, though. When you make like an evaluation of what you're going to be buying, I mean, it takes time, and time is a quantity that you could definitely evaluate differently. So it's, you know, you buy the model. That's one consideration. Then you have to put it together. You have to kind of organize it within a collection. You have to paint it. In many ways, I think those outstrip the cost of the model itself. But you know, I do think at least they have lasting permanence. I mean, I spent a lot on this hobby, tens of thousands of dollars easily. But you know, at least the money I spend still exists in some fashion. It's still on my shelves. It's still in my room. You know, we pay rent on this room as part of the expense of the apartment. But you know, I know lots of people that you know, that they're always complaining they're broke or whatnot. But you know, they're every weekend they're out at the bars having fun, and that money to me is just down the drain, literally. But you know, we just have different priorities in our spending. And if you're like a very casual gamer in the sense that you want to war game but do all these other things, it's probably just not the hobby for you. Like I gravitated, like I said, towards expensive hobbies. So like I've played paintball and things like that, and I love playing paintball. I own paintball equipment and stuff. But there's no way I'm going to be going out every weekend playing paintball. And, you know, I mean, my wife has the same amount of spending money as I do. It's not like she's, you know, has tons of super expensive stuff. We each kind of do our own thing to fit. So are GW's prices too high? I mean, I pay them without question. I would love cheaper prices, but there's no incentive for them to really do so. I'm Canadian. I grew up in Canada, and Canadian prices are about 20% more or so from the U.S. In books and stuff, it's way more. But and so moving to the United States was a nice, you know, everything kind of went down in price for me by about 20%. So that was kind of a nice little bonus. And we lived in New Hampshire for the first year or two, and that's where we are now. And there's no tax here. And back in Canada, you know, it's like 18% is what we used to pay in tax. So, you know, so much cheaper here from what I was used to. So this seems like really ridiculously cheap. And you know, for those in Australia, I get it, man. That must be rough. I you know, I can't really talk on that front. But you know, people buy GW products at about 20% discount apparently. That's something that's very new to me. I wasn't like super active on YouTube for most of my hobby time. So but it seems like most people have access to a 20% discount somewhere in the States at least, or in the UK. I bought the majority of my models from Games Workshop, like apparently a complete idiot. But it really wouldn't change much. You know, now I'm going to be trying to get the discount, but if you know, it just means it's not like I would have oodles of money put aside in reserve. I would just have more models, and I don't really need more models. But I was kind of surprised by that. You know, people were saying that their local store gives them deals. I've never even heard of that. You know, so you know, why would GW reduce its prices? And to me, I see a lot of what GW does in terms of corporate interest, and I have a hard time blaming them for doing things that will make them profit. Every corporation in some sense, screws over its consumer base, regardless of whether or not you're aware of it or not. I used to work in the import kind of industry, essentially. I used to see the company invoices for hundreds and hundreds of companies, and these are invoices between, usually some of them be like personal invoices, like a product that someone would buy off Amazon or something and have it shipped. But you'd also get invoices between companies. So like it would be like, you know, the company ordered its product from China and it's coming in, so you get to see what they're paying for it. And you know, I would tell you every piece of clothing from Asia was maybe at most $1. You know, and we all know what the price of clothing is. And that doesn't, that's not like it's all going to one store. That would be like the same price point at, like, you know, Walmart as like a high-end clothing store. I mean, the markup on those types of products is ridiculous. And I would even get a few invoices from Games Workshop. These would be coming from the UK to the Canadian stores. And, you know, so I got to see what the products were. It doesn't include things like the cost of development or wage or transportation or the upkeep on the store. But it would be like the cost of how much it cost to produce this box. And I would say, you know, it kind of sucked working at the store or working at, you know, in that job and writing down all the details. And I know, geez, how much are they making off this? But those margins weren't extraordinary. Probably about like maybe like a box would come in, it'd be like $3 or $4, and then they'd turn around and put it on for 25 or 30. But the prices were a bit lower back then. This is like mid 2000s or so. So things have kind of gone up. But GW has always wanted the high end racket of the model industry. They don't really have any interest in going down to like the lower end. But I think the growth in competition has definitely kind of shown the price points. You know, Games Workshop just has a higher need for profit than most of its competitors. It has a lot of stores that their competitors don't have. It has a lot of employees that most of their competitors don't have. So, you know, that's largely the reason why, you know, Warhammer, as it was in 8th edition, is not viable for Games Workshop, but it's viable for its competitors. You know, if GW were again to reduce its prices, I'd probably spend the exact amount of money. I just have more models. So, you know, from my perspective, why would they reduce it? And unless you are expecting a huge amount of people to come into the hobby, I just don't see where like a lower price point would be that viable for them. So that's my spiel on the prices, and have a good one.